We'll go live. It'll take a few minutes or a few seconds, excuse me, to equal power and.
And I'm gonna go try to fix this outside.
Okay.
Commissioner Barboa, welcome. All right, David, let's start with our public comment and let folks
All right, our first public comment is Mr. Enrique Cardrell, Executive Director of the Health Equity Council. And Enrique, you will have about a minute and a half to speak, and I'll start that timer whenever you start.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to speak at this meeting. My name is Enrique Cardrell, Director of the Health Equity Council, and I'm here to speak in favor of the Gateway Center. I hope that it goes through, it becomes successful, and I'd like to really emphasize that the potential of not just the building and location is important. People speak of against it, saying it's going to bring unhoused folks to the community. Anybody who lives in the communities, such as myself, I'm a resident as well, already knows there's a large unhoused population there that require services that are close by. So this is really an important addition. And I really think it's important not to add policing as part of that process. Unhoused folks are already over policed as it is. And so looking at how do we support this without increasing policing would be very important. And I'm totally in support and will lend my efforts as a resident and as a public health worker to support this.
Sir.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Enrique, for your comments. Appreciate you taking some time to meet with us this morning, and we will certainly reach out to you as we move through this process. Thank you. David?
All right, and that's it for the live spoken public comments. Again, members of the council, there were 3 written comments, and I emailed all those out last night.
Okay, so did everybody get the copy of the written comments that were mailed out last night, just to make sure that? Okay, well, great. I'll just turn it over to the mayor. He just joined us, and we can go from there.
Everybody's here.
Can I take a point of privilege?
Sure, Commissioner, go ahead.
Thank you. Chair and Mayor, I just to note the 3 public, because this is a public meeting, right? That the 3 public comments, I don't know if those are posted or folks get to see those, but those were 3, and maybe we could name the people and that they are in general support. Not that we need to name the whole thing, right? But that folks from that community and that live and work and that community are supporting. I just want it to be noted publicly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'll just I'll do a quick paraphrase here, but first Enrique Cardrell, who joined in person, which is great, or over Zoom, and sort of expressed support and mentioned some concerns about over policing, which was a good ad there as well. And Kay, I always struggle with her last name.
Bukanea.
Bukanea, thank you. Of course, formerly of the Asian Family Center. You can see her summaries there. Public comment, I think we do post and so forth. So I don't want to read the whole paragraph, but again, to your point, just to summarize, very supportive of the project and helpful for the district and its rich history, and joins others like the Health Equity Council. And then Sienna Wright also commenting this morning over written comment to provide support for the proposed Gateway Center on Gibson and San Mateo. And her partner own a house in the International District. And they see a lot of the challenges on the streets that people are already having and view this as a part of potential for a solution and also a way to deal with that fear that folks who are living on the street have each and every day. So I hope I'm doing justice with the summaries, but I think that's pretty good. And then Donna Detweiler also writes in, and she expresses that her property on Carlisle and Gibson isn't super close to the Gateway Center, but sees homeless folks in her neighborhood and is supportive of opening the center and to provide services and benefits to the unhoused. And she also touches a little bit on how we need to make sure and take care of this and so forth with respect to challenges that can happen on private property. Okay, so we'll call that the little summary there of the other public comment. And it is a good point. Next time, David, you can just kind of scan them in advance and just do a quick paraphrase.
Definitely.
Okay, so we'll officially call this meeting to order and sort of gavel down. We have a quorum, and let's begin with just some administrative items, of course, with respect to take a look at the agenda. Typically in this meeting, we just go with the agenda unless somebody has an objection. So any objections to the agenda? Looks like we're okay there. And then let's go ahead and approve the minutes from April 13th. And so those have been provided to you. Any changes that anyone would like to request to those minutes? Okay, with that, could we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
All right, thank you. And Debbie, thanks for the second, Commissioner and County Manager. And seeing no objection, we'll go ahead and approve those minutes.
Mayor,
Uh-huh.
if I may say, when we have public comment, just as the council members can see, then we highlight those in the minutes as well. So we keep track of those, just as the comments today will be in the minutes. So just wanted to remind everybody those will be documented.
Thanks for that. Okay, let's move on to our first item, which I think is relevant updates from the GMC. We're going with that acronym, Gibson Medical Center, for now. And go ahead, Carol Pierce.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Well, as we have been talking about this, I just want to first start with, and David will help me, we have gateway input at cabq.gov, and that is an email that we've established as community members or any partners would like to weigh in or have a comment or question, and we're keeping that going so we can keep the dialogue going with the community. So the Gibson vision remains, as we've talked about over the last couple sessions. So always so important to mention, it is a health hub. And as it has been since about the 1950s, providing health services, vital health services to our community. And we really, as the city has acquired this building as of April 1st, we really want to keep that legacy of GMC as being a place of health, hope, and healing for the community with those current tenants that are there and hopefully other tenants as well. I will say on that note, I was very struck and moved as we've had our meetings with neighborhoods. One gentleman let me know that was where he had brain surgery, and another neighbor had let me know their baby had been born there. So we just really want to lift up that this is a place of healing, hope, and health. So within that health hub, and that the current tenants take about 25-ish% of that 572,000 square feet. And within that health hub, then a slice will be the gateway. And when we talk about the gateway at Gibson, we talk about those services that our unhoused neighbors need to connect with what they need for their own health and healing. So the health hub is really resonating with our neighbors as we're speaking about that, and just honor that it's been recognized as that for a long time. To provide a few more details, I'm going to hand it to Doug Chaplin, who's really the lead director over at Gibson Medical Center, leading our efforts there.
Good morning. Thank you, Carol. Appreciate that. Good morning, everybody. So currently at the GMC, we continue to get a handle and understanding of this facility. I mean, it is a huge place. You've heard us say that over and over again. And so we just want to make sure that we understand facility, how it operates. We want to make sure that all the systems will be functioning properly. And as I mentioned before, we have 10 tenants. 6 of those are healthcare related. And of those 6, half are hospitals, are designated as hospitals. And so the way that the facility operates is of the utmost importance to them. They have to maintain certain accreditations. They have inspections. And so we're meeting with each of those tenants on multiple levels. One is, what are their needs from a facility standpoint? And then what are their needs from just a community and how we can support them? And I would say that our meetings with them have gone very well. We've been very welcomed by the tenants. They're glad to see all the work that is currently going on at the facility, that the approach we take towards maintaining the building is welcomed by the tenants. And there's 2 of them that are going to be joining our Albuquerque system of care. So of the 6 that are related to health, 2 are directly related to our behavioral health efforts. One of them is the state's is a tenant in Turquoise Lodge, and what they do there, as well as Haven Behavioral Health. And we've met with.
Doug, can you speak up?
Yeah, I guess the Timmys are having trouble hearing you.
Sorry about that.
It's all good.
So where I was at the meeting with the Haven Behavioral Health in Turquoise Lodge, and their connection to the Albuquerque system of care. We've met with multiple layer leadership with Haven Behavioral Health out of Nashville and some of their facilities people, and that's gone very well, and they will be joining our system of care.
Doug, hold on for us 1 second. Okay, keep going.
All right. So as we move forward, it's important as we build out. Can we hear it any better? Testing.
I think you're good.
Okay.
Yeah, automatic.
So as we work on our operations plan and thinking about what the Gateway shelter will look like, we think it's very important that we emphasize exit strategies. We emphasize the connection that our guests will have to medical respite when it's necessary, their connection to behavioral health services. We want to make sure that our staffing levels are going to be correct, so we have the right number of case managers on site, peer support specialists, that we have harm reduction policies in place. We want to make sure that all of our staff is trained in crisis mitigation and management. And so that's kind of where we are currently as far as the GMC goes. So I don't know if there's anything else to add to that.
Any questions for Doug or Carol on the latest in the GMC?
Let me just add one other thing, Mayor, and that is that as Doug described, doing the assessment, but we also have a architect on contract that is beginning to has been assessing the building and looking at the actual physical structure of the building and helping us begin to design the shelter portion of the facility and how that might work and what makes sense given what Doug described, all the other tenants there, and given our need to ensure that we have a facility that operates cohesively with the tenants, but also that helps support the community as a whole. So as we move through that process, we'll be able to give you a little more detail in terms of where precisely, if you will, in the footprint of the entire site, certain operations will be, and especially because there are some mechanical systems and there'll be some need for us to do some rehabilitation to that building to meet code and to meet all the other requirements for a 24/7, 7-day-a-week facility. So we'll continue to work on those issues as we move forward.
Thank you, Lawrence. Other questions on this?
I think on the agenda, there's a tenant's connection to vision, and then there's the importance of access to Mayor. And I'm not sure if we're on the importance of access to, but I think that part really addresses my question. One of the things it was noted that the gate, so that there's 10 residents, I think it was Mr. Ayel who noted, right, there's 10 tenants right now that occupy the space. They take out 25% of the space. We're saying the gateway part of it, like, are we officially naming that the gateway part of this is for unsheltered? This is mostly just for my clarity in how we talk about this, for unsheltered folks facing homelessness, folks that are currently unsheltered for a variety of reasons. And then that there's other, the center's huge, right? So that the idea that this being a health hub that includes medical respite, behavioral health services, those are not part of the Gateway Center. I'm just trying to understand sort of how we're calling this or dividing it, or if that hasn't been decided on.
So, I mean, I'll take a shot at it and then some help from Carol. But the overall Gibson Medical Center as a health hub is important that we maintain the health services that are there and attract other health services for the broader Southeast Heights community. We want to serve that community from a health perspective all the way around. And then at the gateway level, the shelter level, the next piece of the agenda was the importance of access. That's why those folks that are staying there, we've identified at least these 3 areas as key strategies that we will want to connect those guests to during their stay at the Gateway Shelter facility.
Thank you so much for that, Doug. So just for my clarity, when we say gateway, we're talking specifically about unsheltered populations. The health hub is the larger facility that includes tenants and possibly other services that are being built and figured out. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
And-
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Barboa. And the one piece I would add that we're getting input as we're meeting with the Southeast Heights neighbors are other, what I would call health hub services that people are interested in. For example, the idea of a primary care clinic has come up several times. So that's an example of what could be in the greater health hub that would serve the community. So it could build upon that, roughly that 25% of those existing tenants as well.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, that was all the.
Other questions on this? Okay. Eventually too, we'll have some sort of branding on the sign and that kind of stuff. So that'll help too. All right. Well, I think we should go ahead and move on to our community input plan. And so we'll tee up Kinsey Cooper. And she's with Family and Community Services on the city side. Go ahead, Kinsey.
Hello, everyone. I think I got to talk to you a couple of meetings ago. So I know we've been doing updates on community input. I'm going to start by calling attention again to the email address that Carol mentioned and that I think is in your chat, which is gatewayinput@cabq.gov. That is really the best way for people to loop into any future input opportunities, and you can send questions or comments. And it's just the way that we're keeping information straight. You're primarily emailing me if you would like a face on the other end of that, and then others as backup if I'm not available. And also, I want to highlight cabq.gov/unhoused, which is the website on the City of Albuquerque's website or webpage on the website that has all of the information about what the city is doing to address homelessness, and then also a page that is dedicated to this project. So you can see information from previous community input surveys. It's got the framework document from the HCC, and then it has some new FAQs and some other information about this project. And that's where we will continue to post information as we go along, as it becomes available. It's where we'll post upcoming community input meeting dates and times. And then also it has the email address I just mentioned. So it's kind of your one-stop shop. Community input's been pretty important to us from the very, very, very beginning, before this project even, really got totally rolling. And as soon as we closed on Gibson in early April, we immediately reached out to the 5 closest neighborhood associations surrounding GMC. And we've been able to be in touch with them ever since. Two neighborhood associations have had us attend their meetings to give updates and answer questions and share information and tell them how they can loop into the future. Those were Parkland Hills and Trumbull. We have another meeting scheduled a little bit later in May with South San Pedro. And we're still working with the other two neighborhood associations, and if they'd like to have us, we will still be happy to go there. But as you probably know, there's additional opportunities coming up, and there will be throughout this project. These initial meetings were a chance to get the ball rolling and make sure that we were able to do some outreach to the community right from the start. We also did outreach to local businesses and to government officials in the area and other stakeholders, schools, etc. And we will be attending the District 6 Coalition meeting a little bit later this week. Also coming very soon will be the next round of community input meetings. We're currently working through a little bit around logistics and trying to get the schedule nailed down for dates and times and locations. But I would expect that to come out very soon. The best way to get looped into those, I will send a direct email to anyone who requests that through the gateway input at cbc.gov email address. They will be posted on the website, as I mentioned, and then we'll do other outreach as well. But the quickest way is to email that email address, and then we'll be able to be in contact and share details as we go. And I think that's it for me. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Kinsey?
Commissioner Barboa.
Commissioner Barboa?
Of course I do. Sorry, and thank you, Mayor. And I'm sorry I didn't get your name, Katie or
Kinsey Cooper.
Yeah, Kinsey.
Kinsey Cooper. It's a little bit hard to hear with you guys. So I went online and I click on the link, and it doesn't let. There's a link for Spanish, link for English, and it just says login name and password. For
Oh, that's interesting.
And the Spanish link is still in English, even if that was the right place to.
Yeah, let me look into that as soon as this meeting is over. That sounds like maybe we have a technical issue happening there.
But when, so the best way, and I think you said you're attending neighborhood association meetings, is there, because they're so, and one of the things that I love about my district and this area is that we do have service provision, so really great service providers in the area, right? And I guess, and so you mentioned stakeholders, are those part of the folks? And then, some of these folk, like there's like the New Mexico Asian Family Center that's in the district, or some of the communities that actually probably would be referring folks to this, or are there opportunities for those folks to weigh in, or that we're specifically intently reaching out to them?
Thank you for that question, Commissioner Barboa. We had a tour with our key service providers about 2 weeks ago as kind of the first step, just like we did with many of the leaders on this call, just to get familiar with the breadth and the whole space. And so that was one of our first steps. We have service providers, as you know, that are on the service committee as well. And we're very excited that we've added a member who's actually the chair of the homeless committee, I may not have the exact committee name correct, from one of the neighborhoods near GMC. And then she is also joining that services committee. We anticipate having another round of a tour with other service providers, but we did this first one 2 weeks ago and anticipate we've got a list of some others that we need to invite to do another tour. And thank you.
Yeah, and Commissioner, if you don't mind, you can actually just email, in terms of Asian Family Center, International District Healthy Communities Coalition. So if you want to add others to the list for the next tour, just email them on over to Kinsey, and we'll put her email in actually it already is in the chat box.
And my second question to that is that so I because I went on one of the tours, thank you. I really appreciated seeing this space and thinking and visioning what it could be like. I think part of that, but there wasn't an opportunity to give input or hear input, I guess, as this vision comes together. Again, for me, the clarity around like the Gateway Center is separate from this, and the medical hub's going to sort of have this bigger vision of a multifaceted center is important, and how our communities are able to give input on that. It sounds like Carol was saying, right, that folks folks have given some input, but I guess that opportunity between the tour and like real sort of visioning, seeing the pieces as they come together and being able to be part of that process should folks be really interested, which I see a lot of the people that come and are participating online as attendees are folks that come all the time, and they're like volunteering their time to be on these meetings with us. So I just think they might, they know how and when to give input and be part of sort of the process all along.
And Commissioner Barbara, may I just also add, since we might want to just set up a time for Carol and her staff to meet with you and give you a little bit more of a one-on-one in terms of where we are and the details, et cetera, because obviously this is your commission district. We'd love to make sure that if you have folks that we need to connect with that we haven't because they've called you, we want to make sure that we're doing that so that you feel like you've got all the information you need. I know when you get out to the community, along with Councilor Davis, you all get a lot of questions. And so to the extent that you can help us connect with the right people, that would be really super helpful as well.
Yes, thank you very much. And I did ask for it to be part of this sort of community. Even I'm a little bit like to be in the weeds. So I'd like to even be part of like the planning for the input if possible. And I know everybody's time stretched, but where I can be helpful in thinking how we form or have real ability for community to give input, I would love to be a part or helpful in that way.
Great.
Excellent. Sounds good. Okay. Other items, questions on this? Okay, thank you so much on this. And did we touch on the lived experience survey?
No,
Go ahead.
and actually Deputy Uval is going to present that. And I think everybody on the council can remember that we did a focus group of people with lived experience. Pre-pandemic, everything is either pre or post-pandemic. And that was really valuable as we were going down this path about Gateway. This is a recent survey. Just really want to thank Lisa and Quinn for working on this. And Lisa's going to update everybody on the results of the unhoused survey. And thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, go ahead and share it on the screen. I just have it in front of me in case I need to read anything. So I will say this survey was conducted with 59 people. Some of them.
To pull your mask down.
Some of them were staying at the Westside Emergency Housing Center, and others were folks that were sleeping outside in unsheltered locations. And we partnered with some of our street outreach providers to do the survey with those folks. The intent of the survey was really to start learning from folks what they would like to see at the Gateway Center. So you'll see in some of these questions, we started to get pretty granular about some of the details some of the things we've been talking about at a pretty high level, as we begin to plan for the Gateway Center to see what folks who are experiencing homelessness would like to see when they walk in the door. And I think our intent here was to really continue to learn what creates a safe and welcoming environment for folks that folks will want to walk in the door, will want to use these services. This is a draft, what I'm presenting today. You'll see that some of the text boxes need to be cleaned up a little bit. The text is cut off. So we're working on that, but we still wanted to be able to give you an overview. So go ahead and you really just bring up, the chart there. So our first question is wanting to know from folks, when you walk in the door, what is most important for you? And you can see that for the majority of folks, rest and quiet is the #1 need, followed by a warm meal and a hot shower. So nothing surprising there. And again, I think we're asking this question, trying to think through what do folks want that's going to incentivize folks to walk through the door and receive services at the Gateway Center. So you can keep going, just go to the next bar graph. And again, thinking about what creates a warm and welcoming environment, wanting to get a sense from folks around what feels like the appropriate kind of information to be asking for right when someone walks in the door. And most folks felt like it would be okay, or the best thing to do would be to ask for name and date of birth. One thing you everyone listening to this meeting has probably heard us talk about at Family and Community Services is the need to provide a safe place for people to store their belongings. So this is an example of wanting to it's time to start drilling down into that and what are the different options. And you can see here that the majority of folks preferred this blue bar as an individual locker near their bed. So these other options were kind of like in other locations throughout the shelter, but folks wanted their stuff in a secure locker close to where they're sleeping. We know that for any of us as people, having access to safe outdoor spaces is important, just a place to sit and feel the sun and listen to the birds. And that's, a place to get away from other people. So we do anticipate that the Gateway Center will have an outdoor location for folks just to enjoy being outside. And we wanted more information on what was important to folks. You can see here that really all of these elements were important to many people, but multiple quiet places to sit, a place to smoke, and a shaded area with trees were all important to people. And here's where we start getting at the services a little bit more. We're asking folks here, what do folks want help with? What is most important to receive assistance with? Not surprisingly, finding stable housing rises to the top. The majority of folks experiencing homelessness want help finding stable housing. And then there's really a pretty even mix here of the other kinds of services that folks would like, but with finding employment being the second most chosen option. The majority of folks let us know that they would like to have access to substance use and mental health support while at the shelter. And also would like the ability to fill medications at the shelter. So here we're trying to get at some of the barriers that folks are facing when trying to take care of both their mental and physical health. And we know that often it's one thing to get a prescription from a doctor, it's another to get to the pharmacy and get it filled. And that's often a barrier for people. So we could help address that barrier by actually refilling prescriptions at the shelter. And it's kind of along the similar lines, actually seeing a doctor while at the shelter is something that the majority of respondents were also very interested in. And we also wanted to get at why are folks currently not using shelter? And the number one reason that folks gave was the location of the shelter. This was not, we didn't drill down into this question, but I assume that many folks, when they were answering this, were thinking about the West Side Emergency Housing Center, and the distance of that shelter from the center of town made it not a feasible option for them. And then these other reasons as well. And maybe David, you could scroll down to the text, yeah, just so folks can see it. Some of these were cut off, and we are working on this formatting before we finalize this and post it online. And then I think that may be the last question. Or is there one more? Oh, just gender, you can see. And is that the last? Okay, all right. Great. So that presents the survey. Like I said, we'll clean up the formatting and we'll post this online along with all of our other Gateway Center docs so folks have access to it. And I should also say, I mean, this is obviously one small step towards feedback from people with lived experience. It's a small sample, but I think it's very helpful information, and we'll be continuing to do more things like this to get this kind of important feedback.
Yes, Commissioner Barbaba.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is very good information. I would like to see it. And even the ages are very interesting to me. But I think you said that these are folks that were in shelter at the West Side Shelter surveyed. And just as a note, as we continue to think, right, those are people that have then accessed the shelter. We know that there's reasons why people that don't access the shelter. So we'd want to definitely hear from them these same questions, right? Like on all these ends, because obviously if the shelter is serving a certain population, then those folks are willing to access that. what are we missing with the folks that aren't willing to?
Commissioner Barboa, you're correct. And there was a mix of people living on the streets and folks at the west side. And I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I know the majority of respondents were from the west side, but some of them had lived experience or were sleeping on the streets as well. But I agree, we need to hear from the folks that are currently not using shelter if we want to know how to kind of overcome those barriers to shelter.
Okay, other questions on this? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Kinsey. Okay, let's shift a little bit to our UNM Research Interest Initiative. And so we'll hand it over to UNMH.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for inviting me today. I'm here to represent President Stokes and EVP Doug Zadonis. I'm Asada Zarai, Vice President for Equity and Inclusion at UNM, and I also serve on the Youth Housing Continuum Committee. And so in terms of the UNM Research Interest Institute, they have called it the Homeless Research Task Force, or HRT, and I'm going to share a summary of their work from the individual that leads the effort, Dr. Janet Page Reeves. And so far, UNM has allocated funds to conduct the research outlined in the scope of work. And the HRT has identified researchers at UNM in addition to one graduate student to work on the project. They're also consulting with a research librarian at the Health Sciences Library and Informatics Center, and are conducting 2 systematic literature reviews on objectives A1 and B1. And we're also in the process of establishing a data use agreement with the New Mexico Coalition to End Homelessness and to obtain access to the homelessness management information system data for objective A2. And so that's what the HRT has been up to. But please know that there are a number of initiatives at UNM surrounding the issue of homelessness in New Mexico. The Hive Network is led by Professor Michael Pride in the School of Architecture and Planning. And it is a collaborative across campus and community to address adverse determinants of health with a focus on homelessness and especially providing humanistic sanitation technology to those that are unhoused in Albuquerque. UNM is also involved with the Honors College, which has conducted a needs assessment and enumerated our homeless youth at UNM, which is 2% of our student population. They are administering that survey for the second time this spring. And then finally, of course, many of us are involved with the Youth Housing Continuum Committee. And there we've piloted the service providers survey in addition to the UNM Family and Community Health has hosted and organized the Youth Advisory Board in preparation for the enumeration of unhoused youth in Bernalillo County. Thank you. Questions?
Questions on that? Yes, Commissioner O'Malley.
You're on mute.
I'm not as quick on the draw here. Thank you, Asada.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, and I probably should have asked this question earlier, but what avenues are there for students, UNM students, who are experiencing homelessness? Are there sort of counselors at UNM, or is there a program at UNM to help students to find housing? What resources do they have?
Thank you so much for asking that. So we, at this point, unfortunately, do not have dedicated resources. We have resources for all of our students that our homeless students also take advantage of. And so, for example, we have a social worker that works with our student health and counseling unit. And that social worker is shared with the dean of students. And so our homeless youth do have access to that. The unfortunate thing is often we don't even know who they are, because unless we can provide some direct services, often they will not reveal themselves. And so, you know, you ask 100 questions to try to get at what they need and to provide access to resources. And so some have used classrooms as, you know, kind of a place to study. You know, they've utilized the Johnson Gym as a place to shower. And, you know, it's just been, it's been a really hidden population. It wasn't until we conducted this needs assessment survey last year that it became clear that it was 2% of our population. One of the things that our Dean of Students, Nasha Torres, is hoping to find funds for is to create some temporary housing for our students that are experiencing homelessness. Actually in our Youth Housing Continuum Committee meeting last week, it became evident that some of the vouchers may be available so that our students might have access to some of the dorms that are not being used currently, some of the dorm rooms. So it's something we're building toward now that we're more aware of the extent of the problem. Many of us, even I as a faculty member, had a student who was homelessness and provided her access to my office and, you know, everything that I could, but she wasn't willing to go to a shelter. So that's generally how things are done, that one person knows of a student and then provides what they can to help, but we don't have systematic solutions at this point, unfortunately.
Well, thank you for that. And there's a contact person. You know, Vermillion County has the Tiny Home Village, and you know, it's also open to students who are experiencing homelessness. So if there's someone that's a contact, could you please send me that information? Somehow we need to be able to route folks, especially, you know, students who are trying to struggle with also, you know, going to school and finding safe shelter. I know that other schools which I'm not exactly sure the percentage of the population in some of these schools, but some of the universities have actually opened up their parking lots because some of these students are sleeping in their cars. Right. It's a real problem. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. I hope that whatever solution we come up with, that we'll be able to partner with CNM because we know that there is a, you know, sizable population of homeless youth there as well. So I'm hoping that we can find a way to work together.
All right, other questions on this? All right. Okay, thank you so much. Let's look a little bit now at some of our strategies, and we'll touch on our various committees. So David and the team will sort of get the right folks available to chime in on these topics. And so we'll start with coordinated street outreach efforts. And we back up as Lisa Duval.
Here I am. This will be a quick update though. The last time we met, which was last month, the Coordinated Street Outreach Committee was really helpful in reviewing the draft policies that the city's been working on regarding encampments. And Commissioner Barboa, thank you for your help with facilitating that meeting. It was nice to have your facilitation. So we got some excellent feedback from the committee as well as from many other groups in the community, and we're now working on incorporating that feedback into those and updating those draft policies. And then we would typically meet again next week, but our meeting is canceled due to a conflict I have related to the city's FY22 budget. So we'll meet again in June. So, and that's my update. And Commissioner Barboa, anything to add to that?
No, thank you.
Thank you so much. questions on this? And I do know we'll touch a little bit on some of the encampment issues and facilities. So we'll touch on that then. Okay, thank you both. And yes, as Councillor Benton and Davis know, May is budget time. So that's the priority for, you know, everyone, and appreciate folks' flexibility. And I don't know when the county does theirs, but I'm sure it's the same. It's just a different month. So, okay, Youth Housing Continuum.
Yes,
Carol,
that's
go ahead.
Jen Skako and Asada. And I think it dovetails beautifully, Asada, with what you were talking about with the research pieces. So thank you so much for your leadership on this committee.
All right, anything you'd like to add on that, Asada?
Jen, did you want to talk a little bit about our last discussion?
Sure. I think Asada covered quite a bit of it, so we appreciate that. Thank you. I'm really excited to see that our youth needs assessment is just going along really strongly, and that youth group has started to meet to train youth to do enumeration in the community. That's amazing. The leadership team that's associated with that, it continues to meet, I believe, bi-weekly. And a number of us are participating in that, so we're tracking that project along, which is great. Asada talked quite a bit about the needs of UNM students, and so I think that also plays into the need for the young adult shelter. And we did talk quite extensively about the young adult shelter, reviewed the white paper that Quinn had written, talked about some of the ways that the youth homeless providers could partner together, continue to build a hub in the community to support those services when there is a time for a young adult shelter. So I think that was the general update. We had a great meeting. We're meeting next, I believe, in June, and things are going well. I really appreciate Asada and Nasha's leadership as well in that committee.
Mayor, if I may ask, and Jen and Asada, thank you. The white paper on the youth shelter, I don't think we've distributed that outside of, I mean, your committee. Is that
Correct.
Ready to share with all the HCC members as well?
I think so. The committee didn't have any other changes to it substantially, and felt that everything had been captured. So I think that could be shared. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Yes, Commissioner Barboa.
Thank you. And as part maybe for Asada and Ms. Sacco.
It's okay. It's Skako. It rhymes with taco. It's
Skako.
no worries. Thank you, Commissioner.
Skako, and I love tacos. The youth that currently I know, and thank you for asking about the white paper, because I was like, oh, did I miss it? But you know, I guess and I know Quinn and others that are involved in this have been really involved in youth shelters and youth programming. Do the young people that are currently, I used to work in one of those transitional living programs, and they are eager to share. They are some of the most outspoken, know what's not working, know what is working. Have they been able to be a part of this development and really, I mean, be in it, not just ask for input? But
Yeah, so they're directly a part of the needs assessment. So CYFD funded the needs assessment for us in the community in the survey or the enumeration. And so part of that was to have a youth council associated with that and to pay youth to participate in the enumeration, to participate in structured interviews and surveying and those pieces. So they're very deeply embedded, and I feel very confident that PIRE is doing a really good job with that, which is our research entity. Did that answer your question completely, Commissioner?
yes, thank you. I'm glad they're getting compensated for their time.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Jen and Asada, should we plan on that, the timing for that needs assessment that we're all very excited about? Do we think that's going to be done about end of summer? Is that when we should be looking for, and then have a presentation probably here for the full committee?
Absolutely. Yeah, we can make certain that happens.
Great.
Yeah, we wanted to focus on the service providers survey first, so that it could help to inform the needs assessment. And to Commissioner Barboa's point, we are working very closely with our youth advisory committee. And so they're helping us reword questions and, you know, make the survey sound not clinical, but really targeted to the population we want to respond. So it will take us till the end of the summer for sure, but we should have a quality product by the end of the summer.
And last, just my little plug-in to follow up with Commissioner O'Malley's point that the tiny home villages really feel like a place that is ideal for this, like it's a place, like as we're thinking of all the different options and populations and what they need, like youth aging out of the youth system, now being thrown into an adult system, that it's a lot different, right? That the tiny home villages seems like an ideal place for that might be a next move for some of these young people or whatever.
Thank you. I really don't know the research, to be honest, in terms of the effectiveness for youth populations, but we definitely will look into that. I know that Quinn has provided some really great background in terms of what works best. A more group living situation is what she has said works better in terms of creating those bonds. And if you just think about kids that age in college, they're in a group setting, they're not on their own trying to just pay rent, trying to figure it out. They're learning from one another. And so I would think that if the tiny villages were set up in a way that was going to also build community, that would be consistent with what I've seen in the research, but I'd really have to look at that more to give you an informed response.
It is, and actually my whole point was to say I would love to maybe be with that youth advisory council and walk through the tiny home village, hear what they think about it. That's how they could also spread the word of mouth on their own.
Awesome, thank you.
Other items? Questions? Okay, good input. And Commissioner Barboa, you're welcome, of course, to join every single one of these committees if you would like. We would actually love that. So there's no limit on the number of committees you can be on. So
we love her enthusiasm.
Yeah, I'm serious. We would, the more you can be on, the better. Okay, homeless support services.
And we've got Aaron and Commissioner Barboa, and Rodney McNeese is joining us from UNM.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mayor. It's great to serve as a new co-chair along with the Commissioner and Rodney McNeese on the Homeless Services Committee. I appreciate the important efforts that the community and the service providers have contributed to date. Recently working with Quinn Donay prior to her transition, and along with the family and community leadership and others, we identified and presented 5 focused areas for the near term in this service committee, just to keep us focused. And that includes updates on the gateway projects, both at the Gibson Medical Center and at HopeWorks locations, to assist the city in planning the service array provided at the Gibson Medical Center for the gateway, to consider service provision in a way that meets the needs of the surrounding community of GMC, and also to continue with updates and information on the UNM evaluations that are currently in process, and updates on the conditional use permitting process. Additionally, at our meeting on May 4th, Tuesday, Kinsey Cooper presented her kind of her slideshow, the roadshow that she and Director Pierce are currently doing with the Neighborhood Association, and that information and how to reach them. Once again, that email information was provided, and how to do outreach to the surrounding neighborhoods. They've added a few neighborhood representatives to our committee panel. And then the lived experience survey was provided by Deputy Director Uval. So I want to take time to see if Mr. McNeese or Commissioner have anything to add about our most recent meeting.
Good morning, everyone. I don't really. I think you did a good job at summarizing the discussion, and I think it was really kind of a reset point this last meeting with the having a more firm plan for the Gateway Center at GMC, or at least starting the process of developing Gateway Centers. And also with some of the transition with the committee. So I thought it was a good discussion, and I thought Kinsey's overview of some of the information was very helpful. Thank you.
And I will add a final touch is that the date and the time was in flux, and now we have a firm date. It'll be the first Tuesday of each month, and it goes from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m.
Awesome. Other questions from folks? Okay, thanks so much. And, we continue to, we're sort of developing our resource team around obviously this topic in terms of unsheltered folks and so forth, but also the Gateway Center. And so just want to welcome Aaron and Kinsey. You're probably going to be seeing a lot of them in different ways. So we're glad they're joining sort of the crew for all of this work. All right, thank you. Okay, affordable housing crew, back to Lisa.
Back to me. Hello again, everyone. So the Affordable Housing Committee, and we have one of our co-chairs, Betty Valdez, on here, and also Councilor Benton and Commissioner O'Malley participate regularly, which is really appreciated. We continue to meet every other week. We are really still very focused on developing this, what I call our really affordable housing targets, our 5-year targets and annual targets within the different high impact strategies that the committee had identified. So how many supportive housing vouchers do we need? How many units of currently affordable housing do we need to preserve? How many new units do we need to create through construction or acquisition rehab? So we're setting these targets, and now we're at a point where we're trying to drill down into the costs of what it would take to reach those targets. I think one thing the committee's been really has come to light through this process is the need as a community to fully utilize the state's 4% tax credit program. This is an available resource that is not fully utilized, that with some strategic planning we could better utilize. So we've been talking about that. We've also had some guest speakers for our last 2 meetings to help us better understand land market trends and trends among multifamily properties. And that's been very helpful as well in the committee's planning and thinking. So that's where we're at now. And then I invite any of the committee members to add anything that they would like to that.
Others?
No, thank you, Lisa. You did a great job.
Betty.
Thanks, Betty. Okay, any questions for these folks? Looks like Councilor Benton, were you trying to get in there?
Yeah, just quickly, appreciate all the work on the housing committee on this. It's been kind of mind-bending trying to fill out that spreadsheet of Lisa's and just the sheer volume of what we really need to produce in terms of identifying additional affordable housing units, but also the vouchers and the ability to subsidize those rents as well. So really good informative discussion. I look forward to the day when we can present it in full to the council itself. But it's been a lot of work, and it's we're trying to walk that line between acknowledging the need, but also being realistic about how much we can produce in a 5-year period, which is sort of the timeline we're looking at. So really good work. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Councilor. Others on this? Okay. Let's touch on facilities, and we'll start off with Lawrence.
Thanks, Mayor, and good morning, everybody. Just as we all know, our facilities committee met on Friday. We had a great presentation from some work that our friend Tom Neal from the University of New Mexico had been up to Denver and had the opportunity to connect with some folks in Denver related to how they are working on encampments. And our guest speaker, Tuika Montoya from from Denver talked a little bit about what work that they were doing and how they had set up several projects, if you will, and give us some information as it related to services, structure, how the community and neighborhoods reacted to the projects, et cetera. And interestingly enough, as these encampments projects were unveiled in Denver, really gave us, I think I can have Commissioner O'Malley and Councilor Benton describe that conversation as well. But I thought it was a very enlightening conversation, gave us some really good information about how to go about setting up if we move in this direction. And more importantly is also, she agreed to share with us the good neighbor agreements that they had put together with the neighborhoods, their, if you will, budget for how they managed if you will, the costs of running these encampment projects, and also the array of services that are provided within the encampments, which I think was a really great bit of information as it relates to the multitude of services that are available. So these aren't just places for folks just to go and spend the evening and be in a tent, but more maybe I call it to an open air shelter almost, in the sense that they're getting all the array of services that you would find in a shelter, but just realizing that some folks just don't want to be in a building. They would prefer to be in their own space. And then they also provided the actual tents, et cetera. So it was a really good, I think, test, or at least information about how other cities are exploring these options. And so it was good information. We'll be getting those documents from her, and we'll share them with the rest of the committee as they become available. I'll defer to Councilor Benton and or Commissioner O'Malley if they'd like to say a few words. And I don't know if Tom Neal is online, but maybe we can let Tom Neal in as well, and he can give us, well, there he is. Maybe we have Tom Neal say a few words beforehand, since he was the mastermind behind this.
Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you. Just a few comments. I spent a couple afternoons and early mornings up there at the tent encampment, and I think, as you said, Lawrence, very well organized, very thoughtful in the construct. And I think what I took away from it is it's part of a continuum. This is, the desire of the Colorado Village Collaborative is to move folks from chronically homeless situations in steps to permanent housing. And this was one of their tools in that goal. And so there's other examples. Las Cruces has a different model, but I think we can learn from best practices from a number of these groups that are doing this. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just add for the group's information as a whole, this is done. Tom did this as he was out there visiting his daughter, so we really appreciate him, taking some time, because obviously there are lots of things that he could have been doing, and he opted to do some of this work. So on behalf of the city, Tom, thanks for that work. Commissioner O'Malley or Councilor Benton, I don't know if you all want to share your perspectives of the conversation.
Thank you, Lauren. This is something, of course, that I have been talking, well, it's been years now since Councilor Gibson and I went out to see Camp Hope, which is now, I think, in its 10th year, very successful in Las Cruces. And so this has been an ongoing conversation. And what I think is very appealing about these safe outdoor spaces is the infrastructure costs. First of all, they're not permanent. So I think that that's something that is, so they can be moved if they have to be. But the cost, the infrastructure cost, the initial capital costs are so much lower than either shelter or even a tiny home village, especially if you do a tiny home village. It's really, really nice. I still think there's places for all these things. I still support shelters. I still support, the expansion of tiny home villages. But I think the idea of having these safe outdoor spaces, if they're well done, well planned, well designed, well managed, that they also have a place in our community. And as Tom was mentioning, this is an approach. No, I don't use the word solution to anything because we have a complex population of people. There's folks who are experiencing homelessness, could be experiencing it for just a few months. You have folks who, for example, I read the article about the Denver Safe Outdoor Space Project, and it was an individual there who was passing through. For 3 months, he needed a place to stay. He's got a job and he's moving on. A lot of these folks have been construction workers, etc. And rather than have them in a situation where they're experiencing trauma in some way, which of course is now something that is really destroying of basically human, experience, is that what, we need to be able to do that. Does that mean everybody that goes through any of these transitional living arrangements ends up in permanently affordable housing? No. We have people from all walks of life who may decide that this isn't for them and move on or try something different. So, but the idea is that we offer the opportunity for people to be in a safe place. In this case, I think it's very important that people have their own unit, place to put that they call their own, even if it's for a while, even if it's impermanent. This is my space, and I think we've also talked about this other project or this other particular unit that's called Pallet Shelters in Seattle, that has a unit that has its own key and has heating and cooling, which is a step up from a tent, but it's still very, I think it's very humane to have something like this. So so other cities are starting to look at this, and they're starting to move in these directions, and they're starting to build these, give these people opportunities, and communities are leading that effort. A lot of times it's just individuals and communities and churches who are saying, let's get this done, but with the support of the government in many times, the cities and the counties. So anyway, we're going to plan a trip out there, so I'd like to see this as well. So before it gets too late, I'd like to see what's going on as well. And she was very, very welcoming, this individual, Ms. Montoya, and so look forward to going out to Denver soon. Thank you.
Just I'll follow up quickly. A lot of the critique we hear about the Safe Outdoor Space concept is, well, Las Cruces is warmer than Albuquerque. Well, Albuquerque is warmer than Denver. If they're making this work in Denver, then it's workable. They have an interesting and kind of nice organizing principle, which they have a kind of a hard top open shelter. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Tom, but then you can put your tent within that. And really, from a comfort standpoint, that really is a game changer, because although it doesn't seem like much, just the air layer between the tent and the outer enclosure is enough to really, provide quite a bit of comfort even in cold conditions. So, pardon me, even in cold conditions. So, that kind of negates that one concern. I've really been, I was a skeptic early on. I really am convinced that we need to look at this. And as was stated by Tom, it's just part of a continuum. This is not going to take every person off the streets, but it will take a percentage of the street population and give them an option to people who are unhoused neighbors, as Carol calls them, to get off the sidewalk, at least in the streets, in some of the dangerous conditions, and be in a safer environment. So I think it really merits our consideration. I think we've already identified it as a possible strategy. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. And I would just add in, we went to HopeWorks, or not HopeWorks, the Hope Center, City of Hope, Las Cruces.
Yeah, Camp Hope. Yep.
I think it was 3 years ago, and then they came up here. And I just want to echo how impressive, one, that facility is, but two, the mixed nature of it, right? So this notion of just sort of offering people a wide range, a spectrum of ways that they might be able to sort of be sheltered in one form or another. So we're very interested in this as well. And I think we found, so the next question is obviously like, well, where would we do this and how would we do it? And I think the city's interested in helping enable this. And so we have, there's permitting and all of this stuff. And so I think we can make this work with the right willing partner. Frankly, because of zoning issues, it's best if it's a faith-based entity. The counselors can dive into the IDO and all that if they're interested. But we think we can do this now at a faith-based community in terms of the city permitting it. Obviously, if it's out of the city limits, the county would have some jurisdiction there with respect to making it sort of sanctioned. But we do have a candidate, and so we want to kind of work together to see if we can do this. But I think we also really love how well the county's done with tiny homes. So we're hoping the county might be able to take the lead on this one. So I don't know, Carol, if you want to kind of articulate that, or Lawrence. But if I think with the right partnership here, we might be able to try this pretty quick.
So we talked about this a little bit informally, both with Commissioner O'Malley and with Manager Baca yesterday a little bit. And we know that there's been some partnership already with one of our city councilors, Councilor Gibson and Commissioner O'Malley. And so it would be great if on this particular project, we are willing to support the project. And I don't want to speak for the county, but I'll talk to Manager Baca. I think we would really love to see if the county would take the lead on this project, and we would obviously lend some support to create maybe our first opportunity for an SOS place in the city.
Yeah, and I think if county manager wants to chime in or others, but we obviously council put aside some funding for this, so I think we're in to help in a meaningful way. I think though we're not the best entity to actually run something like this, especially with the experience from either contractors or the work at tiny homes. So I think that's where we're kind of hoping the county can take the lead.
I think
so. I think see first county manager and then commissioner.
Commissioner, I'll let you go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, well, ideally what as Lawrence was saying, it does make sense to partner with organizations whose mission aligns with helping folks, of course, missions of churches, and not to quote the Bible, but it talks about many times about how we're going to help folks in need, and especially the very poor. And I believe that we could probably designate people who are experiencing homelessness probably as the very poor. And this allows folks in that, as you mentioned, the ability in the zone to have folks who are to provide shelter, overnight shelter for people who are in this condition, experiencing this condition. So I think that's certainly important. As I said, there's been interest, obviously from the county. Example is the tiny homes. The infrastructure to create that, of course, is a beautiful facility, but the infrastructure to create that was in the millions. And while I don't think any of us regret that, because it has been a real asset to that area. It's been, it's an area that was I think enhanced by that. And of course, our relationship with the community and building support around that was very, very important. And we have an understanding with that community that we're going to vet folks, and we're going to make sure that it's secure and that it's safe, and all these things that are important to neighborhoods, because that is in a neighborhood. Just a block away is a residential community. So we would be looking at the same thing here, and not, again, to run the facility, but to look to partner and provide capital investment to get this thing underway. But that the way that some of this, like the SOS is structured in Denver, is they did get an agreement with the Baptist Church to lease the property. And I think that was one of the issues that overcame the zoning issue. But they did have a nonprofit run the facility, and that seems to make sense. So that's why it was very important for us to look at these structures. Tom went out there, he looked at the structure. It seems to be working, and that's what we would be looking at as best practices. But yeah, to support the efforts of community that wants to see this happen, I think that's going to be very important. And I believe that the county is certainly certainly on board with that.
Okay, County Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I echo everything that Commissioner O'Malley said, and what we will do, our plans are, we're going to go visit the site. And thank you, Tom, for taking the lead on that. And so we plan on taking a trip to Denver, talking, to folks and kind of seeing how they're doing things. And as Commissioner O'Malley said, we'll be working with someone, probably a church, we're not sure, who's going to be willing to provide the services. So we'll keep you updated, but we're going to go ahead and we will be glad to take the lead.
Awesome. Well, that's great news. And so we'll kind of continue working this in that venue. And when I think folks have kind of been in touch. So we've got the partner locally, and then we can just see where it, see where it goes from there, and get to work on it. It'd be awesome. And we'll see. One thing too I like about these is they don't necessarily take 10 years to set up, right? So we might actually be able to help some folks in months, not years, which would be awesome. So okay, well, other comments on this or items on this? Okay. All right. Well, we'll look forward to an update next time on that. And with that,
Mayor, if I may, sorry. I want to make sure, sort of as an announcement that I meant to mention earlier, just a probing question for this particular committee is, I know that the county, or actually just recently learned about the pre-prosecution diversion program. And one of the things that I was most impressed at when I visited on my own Camp Hope many years ago is that they do have an on-site court for folks, and it had eliminated a lot of what, like, homeless folks that aren't making it or to their court hearings and then get warrants, and then it just becomes this big problem. I believe that I just wanted to plug this, and maybe some folks from that pre-prosecution diversion program should be entered or tapped on as needed.
Sounds like a great idea, and I think in the county's wheelhouse a little bit. So sounds good with that. Other comments on this? Okay, well, I think we will do a couple of things here. In terms of just briefly, I think next steps. So one is we'll work through the working group on this latest idea, as we mentioned, and connect up with the potential faith-based organization and kind of work through some next steps there. And then I think we already touched on sort of the various to-do items with the GMC, including also some additional listening sessions and outreach sessions with different stakeholders in the community, especially some of the nonprofit groups and things like that in the area. So I think with that, actually, we will note that Tuesday, June 8th is scheduled for our next meeting. And then as kind of a reminder, as we look down the road, July is typically we take that month. There's no meeting as is the same with council and so forth. And then in August, this particular committee also turns over. So meaning the county will chair the meeting and so forth. So I guess the chairwoman eventually will make those decisions, but the county will be ready in August to run the meeting is kind of what I'm telling you. So as per the agreement. And so we'll have the city side, our last one will be June 8th. So we'll see everyone then. Okay, with that, we're a little over, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second? All right, thank you, County Manager. Okay, we stand adjourned. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.